were some of the main battles that Canadians participated in?
It's a bit difficult to boil them all down because there's a variety of different battles of different length and intensity. But the ones that typically get pointed to are the Battle of Kapyong in April of 1951. That took place in the aftermath of a UN counteroffensive to push troops further north than they had been after the Chinese intervention, and was largely a defense against the last major push of Chinese troops as part of their spring 1951 offensive, with the objective of destroying a large number of UN units and taking Seoul. The resistance at Kapyong with Australian, Canadian, British, and New Zealand troops as part of the, and also American troops, was really instrumental in halting the advance of the Chinese, because the lessons of that first few months of fighting the very sizable Chinese forces was that retreat wasn't necessarily going to save your forces, that you take advantage of the firepower, you hold on as long as you can, and a rigorous defense will usually outlast their ability to sustain operations. And that did definitely prove to be the case, although in Kapyong at the cost of 10 Canadian lives, as well as I think about 30 some Australians. So that was often heralded as the greatest success because it was a material benefit to the UN position, and it did not end up getting rolled up by the Chinese in April 1951, and ultimately led to those lines being stabilized through further operations. There are, of course, UN counteroffensives like Ripper and Killer that followed that, and leading up to the defensive lines that where about the current DMZ is, and which were defended through those following years. And there were two signature battles at a place called Hill 355, which is a very important piece of real estate that overlooked the Seneca Valley. So it was a dominating position that overlooked this area and gave command over the no man's land, Chinese on the opposite hills. And so it was real estate that the Chinese would very much prefer the UN not occupy. And so in late 1951, October 1951, there's a series, November 1951, there were a series of offensives and leading to a battle that was fought by the Vendésième, the 2nd Battalion, the Vendésième, which was a very hard-fought battle to keep control of their position while allowing the Americans time to regroup and reoccupy positions on Hill 355. It's called the Battle of the Saddle. D Company of the 2nd Battalion of the Royal Vendésième with a stalwart defense over those days, which ended up earning Léon Major another distinguished award after his signature involvement in the Second World War. About a year later, in October of 1952, the 1st Battalion of the Royal Canadian Regiment ended up having to sustain and defend that same position against a very severe Chinese offensive with enormous artillery concentrations, and was one of the worst nights of the war for the Canadians because of the numbers who were killed. Thousands of rounds landing on the positions, and close in fighting in October of 1952. And then in May 1953, another battle that's often spoken of is Hill 187, which is occupying the same range of mountains or hilltops, and a raid enforced by the Chinese the late period of the war led to a sizable number of Canadians killed and captured. But the hill was sustained largely through, as with Kapyong, dropping munitions onto the positions that they were defending. So those are a few. There's others like the defense of Hill 97 in the Battle of Songok Spur, it's sometimes called, in the lead up to that initial Battle of Hill 355. Subsequent Battle of Hill 355, I should say, where a very small number of Canadians defended a position against a much more sizable Chinese assault overnight. And then there were the battles that were on a daily or nightly basis, where people would go out into the no man's land between the Canadian and UN positions and the Chinese positions in order to gain intelligence about their locations and dispositions, to seize prisoners and so on. And that was a very tense and nightly battle that could be a small number of people involved or up to a company involved, with nightly casualties and all the challenges that night fighting involves. So it was the war was hard fought, even during the time that there was officially a pause on fighting during armistice negotiations. It didn't stop just because people were around the negotiating table.
Right. Yeah, was there also like an island of prisoners where they participated in a little bit?
The Koje-Do Island,
right,
which is was an island where the captured North Korean Chinese prisoners were located, and which the Royal Canadian Regiment was involved in guarding. And there was a riot in Koje-Do Island. They took a U.S. Commandant prisoner. It was rather a bit of a black eye, public relations wise, for the United Nations. And Canadian politicians were none too pleased to learn that Canadians were involved in the guard duties there, and they were reassigned thereafter. So, yeah, Koje-Do was not a battle per se, but it was one of the incidents which also highlighted the challenges. One of the central challenges of ending the Korean War was what to do with the prisoners that were taken during the war, because there was a question about whether they should be returned to communist states, or whether they should choose which Korea they wish to live in, or which China they wish to live in. And that was a big sticking point through the end of the war, and really prolonged negotiations through that final year.
Right.